Hey, everybody. My name is Mike Whitmire, co-founder and CEO of Flowcast, also proudly an inactive CPA. Welcome to Blood, Sweat, and Balance Sheets, the podcast where I talk about whatever I want, namely in the finance, accounting realm. I love chatting with executives, whether they're in the investment community, accounting, finance, what have you. Today, I'm very excited for our episode. I want to welcome aboard Stefan Van Dijvendyk, our new evangelist here at Flowcast. And I'm especially excited to have you on board because you're going to be taking on a lot of my job responsibilities. So welcome. Care to just kick it off? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the welcome. I'm super excited to have the honor to be on Blood, Sweat, and Balance Sheets. Much cooler people and more important people have been on here. So this is exciting. As Mike said, my name's Stefan Van Dijvendyk. I'm just joined the Flowcast team a couple of weeks ago, and it's been a heck of a ride already. I'd say when you kind of make that transition, there's always like a little worry, like, am I doing the right thing? And it's very rare that 2 weeks in, you're like, oh, I made the right decision. So really, really excited to be here. I come from Kodiak Cakes, which is a CPG company that makes, whole grain, high protein pancakes and other kind of center aisle product goods. While I was there as a corporate controller, grew a team of roughly 4 people to a team of 10 with really segregated roles and responsibilities, really know how to execute on their roles. And previous to that, I was at Skullcandy Inc., where I was the U.S. controller, kind of divisional controller, seeing the consolidation and U.S. entity. And that was like a really great place to learn my trade and to cut my teeth as a controller. Before I came into industry, I was at KPMG for a number of years. And that, that's a wild ride. There's, when we talk about blood, sweat, and balance sheets, I think that's where it starts for a lot of us. There's
Agreed.
A lot of blood, a lot of sweat, and there are so many balance sheets.
Yes, there are. Very well played. And how long were you at KPMG?
I was there for, I think, just shy of 5 years, just right before you kind of transitioned into the manager role. I had a great opportunity to go into industry at Skullcandy and took the leap and never looked back.
All right. And I am a big Skullcandy fan. The Aviator headphones in particular are one of my favorites. Were those like the best-selling headphones you guys made?
Not the best selling, but one of the better performing ones. Since then, I think they've come out with some like really great product for over the ear, but those Aviators just had, Skullcandy, if Skullcandy had anything, they had style, they had a good style. And those Aviators, I think, were maybe the pinnacle of that style. The other, there was a few like that, but yeah, definitely one of the better sounding ones too. I had like 2 or 3 pairs of those that I burned through because I wore them so much.
Yeah, me too. Like the inside of the ears would start to wear away. I literally had them on all the time. And but that said, they were very durable and like very high quality. And they looked like brown ones, right? I think I had the brown.
Yeah. Like the old school. Yeah. Those are great ones. I went, I like my kicks white. I like my headphones white. So I actually had the big white ones, but I did dig those brown ones.
They're very awesome. And then I'm a big Skullcandy fan. I know around the office we have a lot of Kodiak Cakes fans as well. So it's cool you come from a background where a lot of the companies like resonate with the people that you're chatting with. So on that note, I actually thought it'd be interesting. You made a big career shift. This is not something that a lot of accountants normally do. So could you just explain your new role at Flowcast a little bit and kind of what you stepped into?
Sure. It's, I think, as like the role's like pretty fluid in a lot of ways, but a lot of it is to help with a lot of the evangelizing that you've been doing and holding the torch on for the industry for so long. I wasn't really something I was considering. I was definitely interested in Flowcast. If you look at my career, it's like, I worked for Kodiak Cakes, which is a product I really knew and loved. And to this day, I love that product. If anybody hasn't had it, I recommend you go try it out. And previous to that, I was at Skullcandy, which was like definitely pinnacle, like top 10 companies. Like, I love this product. So when I was looking to transition from Kodiak Cakes, very much having a product I believed in and trusted in and knew was very important to me. And Flowcast was almost immediately at the top of my list. We had implemented it at Kodiak Cakes. We had been very successful with it. And I just knew that if there was an opportunity there, I should look at it. So when I was talking to the recruiter about like kind of different opportunities, she said, just hear me out on this. The more she talked about it, Barbara Teal got her claws on me. And I was like, you know what? I'm in. Because I think what Flowcast does that's really different from a lot of other ERP and accounting and financial service softwares, fintech softwares, is you guys practice what you preach, right? And you go out and you don't just try to sell the software, you try to sell accounting and you try to improve the industry. And that's something that going through that, as you said, blood, sweat, and balance sheets in your career, I was just really excited to actually make an impact in that way. So the longer I thought about it, the more it just seemed like, you know what, there's not a lot of opportunities in life that you can take a leap like this. And this is definitely the place, and this is definitely the time.
And I will say, it was tough finding someone who had the right background and fit the bill, had kind of the public speaking chops, and was also interested in the position. And I mean, when you and I were chatting, I was like, oh man, we found the guy. This is great. The mix of audit, and then as a controller at a kind of larger company, and a two-time controller, just knowing what you're doing and then understanding your usage of Flowcast and kind of what you think about the industry at large, it all aligned really well with obviously our DNA at Flowcast. The requirement here was obviously an accountant has to come in and be taking over this position. A lot of companies might not hire a subject matter expert for this, which is very odd to me, but that is how some of them operate. So I was thrilled to bring you on board. And with that, I'd love to hear some of your takes on the industry right now. Like when you take a step back and think about accounting, just in general as a profession and technology wise, like what's your take on what's going on out there?
I mean, it kind of depends on how much time we have, right? Like this is a topic I can go on for quite a while. Yeah. I think a lot of the way the industry is moving is there is a concerted effort to optimize and improve the close. I think in the past, boards used to be more understanding of reporting requirements, the delays, the timelines, et cetera, on what kind of causes, hey, the end of the month was 15 days ago. Why don't I have like a detailed report of what's going on? But what you'll notice in these boardrooms a lot of the times is the CFO goes in there, gives their financial analysis of what's happening in the company, delivers the results, and says, hey, this is, even maybe gives them what they're going to do in the future to course correct or improve or whatever it is. And the board says, well, that's great. Thank you for the information. Where are we at today? That's their immediate response. And I think you see a lot of CFOs, and you see the office of the CFO really getting beaten up on being able to give that reporting earlier and give that reporting more live. So the first step in doing that is just trying to get a better handle on the close, streamline that process, and create, a quicker timeline, a shorter runway to get that reporting out. I really do think after that, building into it is just then how do you get reporting, almost day of or the day after, whatever it is. And again, it goes into looking at your processes and figuring out a way to build in accruals and get everybody aligned to just get even the potential of mid-month reporting out to give those answers sooner. Because that's, if you want to be a controller that supports your CFO and you want to support the office of the CFO, that's one of the big directions you need to go with. Unfortunately, the hard thing is we're in a time where there's less and less accountants, right? I think you've even talked about the Great Resignation in the past in some of your work, and it's harder and harder to find like good help that knows what they're doing, that is dedicated to the career. And the schools just aren't pumping them out as much as they used to. And people are retiring because, market's hot, things are going well. And you're kind of getting squeezed on both ends, right? You have a board that's like, I want reporting to be snappy. And then you have a diminishing team. So tools like Flowcast are just really critical to really get in there and manage this like ever constricting environment that accountants have to work in.
So I have great point. I want to circle back to the reporting sort of more in real time. When I started Flowcast was a senior accountant. I was not in the boardrooms doing those types of things. And the notion of a continuous close and instant reporting started coming up, but really it was through like Gartner and their marketing type stuff. So I always discount all of that. So when you use the word reporting and mid-month reporting, does that mean a fully closed balance sheet and financial statements? Is that key metrics? Like, what do you mean by reporting? Could you really just define that for the audience?
Yeah, for sure. I do see this like idea of continuous close to be more of a merriment between the two kind of functions within the office of the CFO. You have your accounting function, you have your finance function. And to get to like a mid-month close of the books or mid-month, reporting, what you really need to have is like, there's certain numbers that are easy, right? You can easily report on revenue for most entities mid-month. The hard part is, how do you define, where your shipping bills are going to be at, where your AP is going to be at, where your accruals are going to be, your SG&A. And so that is where you got to take to the next step of your budgets and marrying that back into really solid, strong accruals. And the way I look at that, that's a communication issue, right? That's communication issue internally with the accounting team and externally with the finance team, and even past them with your operations and your sales and marketing teams. So I think what you get is a really strong estimate based off accruals, mid-month, maybe even a week, prior to the end of the month. You have a really good forecast of where it's going to end, because you've built in really good lines of communication with your internal and external customers, and you've really just upped the ante on what you can do with your budgeting and your forecasting.
So it sounds like the real ask, if I'm an investor, a board member, is effectively like, hey, how are we doing on a budget versus actual performance? And it's not that it has to be reconciled to the dollar with every account, but these key areas, are we tracking ahead or behind the plan that we had talked about?
Yeah, it really is having a solid discussion on budget to actual, and but a lot of that information, it doesn't always come in internally, right? It's reaching out to vendors and saying, hey, where are we at? What's going on? And that's where tools like Remind, really are just super instrumental in being able to shorten that communication window,
right,
and get you to the point where finally, after decades of everybody talking about continuous reporting and continuous close, I really think we're on the precipice of getting there with these fintech tools like Flowcast and some of the others put together on your accounting team.
This makes me want to accelerate the budget to actual product that much more. Move it up on the roadmap.
Oh, heck yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So you had talked about the talent shortage as well that we're kind of having. And this is something we've been talking about at Flowcast, and I didn't even realize how bad the stats are around this. Like 75% of AICPA members are eligible for retirement today. Wow. That's pretty terrifying, and fewer people are graduating in accounting than there were in the past. 5 years ago, that number is declining over time. Yet my understanding of how the economy works is the economy consistently grows, and as such, you would need more accountants to help support that growing economy. So it feels like there's a crunch coming. So what are some of the things that you see at Flowcast that excite you about that problem / opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, so what I love about it's a really hard problem, but with hard problems come great opportunities, right? So you can, you're kind of in a position where you can really, you're really forced to make decisions on saying, I can't have my team in the mundane. I can't have them in these really repetitive manual tasks. I need to elevate them outside of that, and I need to utilize them to their fullest potential. And as tough as that is, right? Like, that's not a fun problem to figure out as a manager. And it's not always an easy thing to coach through as a mentor. But when you see that happen with a team member, they really just get so much more satisfaction out of their job, right? So someone that's no longer just like, yeah, I'm just entering in invoices, I'm just entering in bills. And you say, you know what? You've done a great job. You've done that. Let's automate that. But now let's elevate you. And I want you to be a more strategic player on my team. I want you to help, look at the information we have and help inform decisions. I want you to take the data and turn it into like valuable reporting, and not, a lot of times I think a lot of teams give information to their controller and then it's a black box. They're like, I don't know what he does after that.
Yeah.
They're like, maybe nothing, maybe everything. It's hard to say. Now you're saying, well, welcome in. Now you're part of the real team. Like, let's, you always were, but like now you're part of this controllership. Let's get in there and do this together. And you really just see team members have a lot more satisfaction with their job, a lot more career prospects. So I do think, as much as it's a hard thing, when you solve it, you have a stronger team, and you're more likely to keep your team members with you because they know that you have a growth and potential for them. And what's great about things like Flowcast is it's meant to streamline all that, right? Every single tool that Flowcast puts out is meant to streamline these more mundane, repetitive tasks, ease communication lines, make sure that we take anything that's vague and make it really, easy to understand, and lines of communication very clear. And so that's what that's one of the things that excited me about Flowcast the most when we implemented it. And then it was, we grew with the company, right before I left Kodiak Cakes, we were looking at Flowcast Ops and it was like, oh man, I've wanted this since I think the second month that we used it. Nice. I was looking, like, I want to use this with everybody in the company. I want everybody on this because this is great. And then when, Shiva brought up Flowcast Remind, and, you're just looking at it's like, man, the amount of times I hear my team complain about, well, I've reached out to them. And that's a problem to solve by itself. You got to create accountability elsewhere. But the idea that the team doesn't have to take 2 to 5 minutes to do that. And I really do think, and you'll see other really great CEOs and leaders talk about this, and you'll see it in like almost, every fifth management book out there, is people only have so much mental capacity to give. And the more directions you pull people in, the less likely they're able to execute and let alone execute with excellence. Right. And I think a lot of what we want and what you want and what you've talked about is being able to execute with excellence. So when you remove these little things out of their lives, all of a sudden they don't have to remember this thing. They can just focus on finishing the tactical and helping you with the strategic. And that's just so huge and important. And that is what really alleviates that hiring crunch. Instead of having to hire 3 more people to do the mundane, you have one person that's out of the mundane, and now you have another person helping you with reporting, and you didn't have to go find and hire that person. So I that's what I love about where Flowcast is going and taking accounting teams.
And you certainly, somebody who's gone through the schooling and the work to become a CPA should not be sending out repetitive emails like that. Right. Not a good use of time. And that was an interesting product decision for us. Actually, you haven't heard the story behind this, but the Remind was a problem that I faced personally following up when I was a senior accountant with our customer service people to get our percentage completion, and I just got so annoyed with it. So it was really calling back to a personal pain point and being like, let's build this. Some of the pushback we got at the board level and the executive level was, well, I can't sell that to the controller. It's not their pain point. Like, are they going to want to buy that? And it was kind of like, well, I get that concern. Yes, it's not a direct value prop. It's not a pain point that they're experiencing, but their whole team is experiencing it. And if we can make their whole team more productive, presumably that helps them. So there is really that, like, for us to focus on that mundane that's happening in the trenches. And I want to follow it up with another story, calling back to being strategic and data entry. Like, one of the more embarrassing accounting stories I have is my very first close. I was doing deferred revenue. It took me forever, like literal days, to close this deferred revenue account because of how much manual work was going into it. Today, you would use one of our products to automate all of that, but I spent a couple of days doing it, and it finally balanced. And I was like, yes, there we go. It all reconciles. Like, felt really good about myself. And then the CFO comes out. He's like, so what's our deferred revenue balance? And I was like, I couldn't tell you within like 30% what this number is, because I've been so focused on every little one-off transaction to make them match and get them off my plate that I completely lost sight of the big picture. And that was like a real epiphany for me of maybe I should be taking a step back also and thinking about stuff, but you legitimately don't have the time when you're looking at every little thing and trying to make sure it reconciles from there. So personally feel what you're talking about for sure.
But you make a fantastic point that if you, in my opinion, if you're going to be a controller that is able to do well and execute at your role, it's not always about you. In fact, I would say most of the time it's not about you. It's about your team, right? It's about all the downstream processes. A lot of times we get lost as accountants as saying, okay, well, what's the ending number? What's the report? But it always goes back to the transaction. And if you have crap at the transaction, it's going to be crap by the time you get to reporting. And it's so important to recognize the importance of that. And that's a lot of what Flowcast does. And that's why it actually succeeds in this space, is it recognizes that and allows you to do that, So yeah. And I can, I think every accountant probably has your same story. I think I had within my first week, I think it was maybe my second week at Skullcandy, we had just closed the books, and the director of accounting, the now CFO, Autumn, asked me a very similar question. She was like, yeah, you did it. So what do you think? And I was like, I don't remember even the number, nor do I think I really understood how the number came about. I just remember that I reconciled it, and I looked at the report, and she was like, okay. And I was like, no.
What do I think? What do I think? I think I'm ready for a day off after after all that.
Yeah.
So do you have can you think back to a story of like a staff or senior level person who was able to get some work off their plate and elevate and do something more interesting with their time?
Oh yeah. I mean, it really, gosh, there's like so many. I'm trying to think of like the best story, but I'll just go back to the accounting manager at Kodiak Cakes, Sonia, also a huge lover of the product. Hope she doesn't get upset that I told everybody that, but she's a huge Flowcast believer. And Sonia, was really instrumental in managing the close, making sure everybody got their tasks done. And that's a really mundane thing to do, right? Just following up with every single person. Hey, did you finish your task? Hey, now it's this person. Hey, now it's my person. And she was spending so much time doing that. And, that's not just, it wasn't just a waste of time. It's also just like I said, a huge mental burden. So,
yeah,
we implemented Flowcast and it was a real quick, easy, really frictionless implementation, got the team up and running on it. And just by the fact that she no longer had to tell person A that something was done and person B now can review and kind of be this like module of communication between everybody, we reduced the close days down, almost immediately, I think by like 2 to 3 days, like just overnight. Didn't even have to like try to identify all the other issues. It was just like overnight. I was like, yeah, we're just as soon as someone's done, someone else is moving on to it. And so Sonia was able to stop doing that. And she was able to take on a lot more close tasks earlier in the process and look at them in a lot more detail. And so all of a sudden, like overnight, when I was having conversations with her around the end of the close, when we're trying to do reporting, it was no longer like, well, this is done, but like, there's a couple questions. It was like, hey, this is done. And because I had so much time to look at it, I noticed A, B, and C, and I think, X, Y, and Z about it. And then as a controller, that made it to when I go into giving my budget to actual, my month over month, I had great information at hand to help. And she was the one that was instrumental in providing that, right? Because she was able to be strategic and look at it and enjoy it. And it just grew from there. She, as the company grew, I mean, Kodiak Cakes went from 4 individuals to 10, but the company grew from like, 100 million to, almost 300 overnight, it's just like growing like crazy. And, with that comes a lot more reporting. And so it's like more and more stuff was getting thrown on her plate. Could handle it. She could handle it. Granted, she's a rock star, but also she had the tools in place with Flowcast to be able to do that. And I think that provided her just a lot more enjoyment out of work. There was so much less stress.
Well, I have found that it's the best accountants who like Flowcast. They want to get better at what they're doing, not just tread water. And so I'm not all that surprised to hear that she's an all-star. That warms my heart. Saving a few days off the bat and then getting to enjoy her job more. That's that's very cool. You had made the comment at the beginning that you wanted to get more ops on Flowcast when you were doing it. Like what? You're the controller. A lot of people wouldn't say the controller should be running operations. What makes you feel like that made sense for you guys to be owning some of that?
It's the buck has to stop somewhere, right? And a lot of times, the person that delivers the message is, is the one that has to like take the first hit. So you look at the CFO and you look at the CFO in the boardroom. Well, even though it might have been an ops error, the CFO is probably just delivering the news sometimes, and the CFO is the one that gets beat up first to say, hey, why'd you let this happen? So I think, my perspective is a lot of accounting functions, a lot of the office of the CFO at a lot of companies takes on this burden just naturally by the way it's communicating everything that goes on. But what you also see with it, and so we kind of have this, I would say we have a motivation to prevent ourselves from looking bad, even though it's not something that has to do with us. But above and beyond that, I think, accountants kind of have 2 competitive edges on other departments. And this isn't to knock any department, but we come from a field that preparation and review is an iterative process that is expected in everything that you do. And so every time you do something, someone else is going to review it and they're going to critique it. And that's the expectation. And it's not the expectation that you don't find errors. Errors are human. It's fine. But you always know that you got to prepare something as if other people are going to look at it, and you don't know to what level someone's going to look at it. And when that's in your DNA, you will execute on the finer things very much, just at a very higher level than others will, because you just have that rigor built into you. And a lot of other departments, they don't have it. They're fast moving. They're trying to get things done. Managers don't have time. But accounting, it doesn't matter how much time there is. It has to be reviewed. It's just, it's the way it is. And so because of that, we have a lot less errors, and we understand the details just that much better. And I think the other thing that is really important, and you've talked about this a lot, and that's one of the things I love about Flowcast and this opportunity, is the recognition of this. Accounting really is the language of business, right? It's, we kind of say that, and I think a lot of people don't take it super seriously, but you don't have reporting and you don't really know how you stand until accountants get in the numbers, clean them up, and tell you how you performed. We really know the business through and through, from the transaction all the way through, how the transaction occurred all the way through. So if something falls through on the ops end of the house, let's say, the demand signal was wrong and that's what's causing all these issues, or the supply signal was wrong and that's what's causing all the issues. Accounting cares about that number because we have to deliver that, but we also understand, we understand how it occurred. And so we have this really critical insight to the whole function and the language of business to be able to come back and say, hey, immediately I can tell you this is what occurred and how we need to improve it, because I have this 30,000 foot level, but I also am there right at the tree level, seeing everything else that went on. And that's a rare thing to get in any other departments. So those are the real two competitive advantages I see in accounting. And I just look at an organization and I say, well, why wouldn't you use, if you're going to set your lineup for bat, you put your best hitter in place where they're good, where you need them. Right. And that's what you want to do here, right? You don't want to have this asset that you're not investing in, that you're not utilizing to its fullest potential. Because heck, that's why we're in business, right? We're there to get the most out of things.
Yeah, the number cruncher notion is, I guess we're good at crunching numbers, but a lot of software does that on our behalf at this point. I'm not pulling out my calculator to do too much stuff on the fly. And yeah, it's more about the rules, regulation, guidance. We do so much around documenting policies and procedures with Sarbanes-Oxley and just control tracking and all that stuff. I'll also throw out that, as we've discussed, we're generally understaffed, and as such, figure out how to get stuff done as efficiently as possible with the tools that we're given. So I think it lends itself really well to an operational role. And I'm curious if this was the case at Kodiak, because it does seem like a very operations intensive. Was there a COO independent, or did that roll up to the CFO?
No, there was an independent COO, and listen, the ops team at Kodiak Cakes is fantastic. But the issue is, it kind of goes back to, there's probably someone famous that said this, but I have no idea who it is. But those who don't know the past are destined to repeat it, right? And accountants, we know the past, right? That's the world we live in. We live in that reporting. We live in the past. And so we're very much keen on not letting it occur again in the future. And so you look at these operations teams at these fast growing companies like Kodiak Cakes, and these crews are just so focused on tomorrow, right? And being able to meet tomorrow's objectives. It's really hard for them to remember, maybe errors in the past and mistakes that have made in the past. And hey, that you need to make sure you don't do that again. And that isn't a knock on the individual, but that's the nature of a fast-paced entity, it is what it is. And that's a good thing. But that's where, the accounting team is so instrumental in assisting or even driving where operations is going, because we can say, hey guys, 6 months ago, we made a similar choice and it was very costly. And what we've learned from that looking back is we need to do X, Y, and Z. And, operations team don't, like you said, they don't write that stuff down. The documentation isn't there. They're moving fast. They're breaking things. And so having that, conservative, and not in the political sense, conservative in the sense of I take a step back and I look at something before I leap in, is really important to going to the next level from an operations point of view. And that is something that our, the office of the CFO at Kodiak Cakes really delivered to the operations team as we worked lockstep with them. We had great communication rapport. And honestly, they really appreciated what we brought to the table and how we helped them, because they knew we had their backs. And when we gave advice, it was worth listening to. And honestly, different, because Skullcandy was not in the same growth stage as Kodiak Cakes, but Skullcandy had the exact same thing. This is a company that's already matured and kind of, at the time had a lot of its growth, though I think they're still going to be growing, and they've been growing and doing great things since I've been there. But that really close relationship with the accounting department and the operations department was really influential in the company, just being able to make sure they didn't bring on too much of the right inventory, that we identified slow moving inventory early and pushed it sooner rather than later to maximize margins and profits. And when you're kind of not in that growth cycle, you're kind of later in the later stage, man, that's what's really important to driving your EBITDA and your margins is having that help from your office of the CFO to drive true results.
Operations is really interesting. It's a super broad term, and at different companies means different things. Like we're a SaaS company, obviously, so supply chain isn't really like an operational thing we have to worry about, and what does inventory cost, all that kind of stuff. So you're more with those types of areas, like collaborating with them, providing information, presumably through the budget to actual process, or maybe the flux analysis process, looking at trends on things. And then there's the other area of operations, which I really think accounting should kind of own, which is the cadence of how the company is getting stuff done. What are you doing? And, this was really kind of brought about by just some reading I was doing around how much accounting gets into a quarterly cadence, and we're closing the books, we're reporting, we're doing all of this. And at first we work closely with sales to set a number and track progress and report on if we're hitting the number. Is that how it worked at Kodiak as well? Or am I in too much software world where it's like, give a sales rep a quota and go hit your number, and that's how it works? Or do you guys have like revenue targets that people were trying to make also?
Yeah, I mean, it's different product, but it's really similar in a lot of ways, working with your sales team to set what a reasonable number is for them to execute against. You might, it's a little hard to explain where you came up with your number, especially as a growing company. Like, for Kodiak Cakes, we might look at points of distribution and velocity to set a sales budget number for the year, right? A revenue number for the year. And then you give that to a sales manager that's like, okay, so I just need to take them from here to here, but how do you want me to do that? So there's definitely that same aspect where, accounting really is in that cadence of, hey, we close every month, we report every quarter, we report annually. But I think, if you watch a lot, like any, sports documentaries or anything like that, you notice that like all the greats, man, they will just grind away at one thing, right? Mm-hmm. They are hyper-focused and they grind away, and it's very iterative what they do. And that's how they become great. And that's accounting in my mind. Like that really is what we're doing, and bringing that level of rigor to the rest of the organization, whether that is operations or even sales, and saying, set your plan, set your execution, and just keep doing it, keep refining it is really the only way in my, and the way I see things, is the only way to take it to the next level is you got to grind out that iterative process.
And there's always, this is why I love our analytics product, not to pitch Flowcast too much, but it is like, hey, where's the next bottleneck? And we can solve that bottleneck and then move on to the next one after that. Was that how you guys kind of utilize that solution?
Okay, so yes, 100% yes. You could, we use the close analytics tool to kind of identify the longest pole in the tent, right? Mm-hmm. We're always talking about, that's what we always refer to it at Kodiak Cakes, the longest pole in the tent. Which one's the longest pole? What are we taking down? What are the dependencies? It really helps with, not maybe the close analytics, but the tool itself helps with understanding those dependencies. But the analytic tool was really important to that. But we actually use another way that I felt was almost equally impactful, which is a motivator. Right.
Yep.
We were talking earlier about the Great Resignation, and you've talked about this in other work, and it can be hard, especially in this virtual world, to keep your team motivated. You're getting squeezed from all sides. There's a lot of pressure. Accounting definitely is the school of hard knocks.
Yes, it is.
It's not for the faint of heart, even though it sounds like, oh yeah, they're just an accountant, they're just a CPA. It's like, oh no, this is you're in for a journey. And that was one thing that we saw like really great results with Flowcast, is this close analytics tool sent out to their team day 3 of the close and say, hey guys, we're beating the close. We're beating it into submission. You guys are slaying it. The team goes into the next day saying, well, I mean, I'm doing well this far. Like, I'm not going to quit the last 2 days. I'm not going to take it easy. I mean, if you have a, I feel like most accounting teams want to achieve and be better and be best. And that is a really impactful thing to show them that on a whole, this team is killing it today. You are keeping up with stuff. And if they're not, let's say they're not achieving it, right? You're like, oh, well, do you want to share that? 100% you want to share it with them. It's like someone that's in the gym and they're like so close to hitting a PR on the bench. You don't grab the bar. You get in and you yell in their face like, you got this, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
And that's what the tool's there for. You send that to them, be like, guys, you are so close. You're so close. We can do this. And next thing you know, you go to the next day, you're ahead. You're ahead. You didn't have to individually coach. You didn't have to change any processes. You had a motivation tool to come in there. So it really is great from a lot of different perspectives. Like, process improvement is really just ingrained in the heart of accounting in the office of the CFO. But then you have a whole nother thing with motivation. You can use it for that too.
Yeah. And what about team building? One of my things back in the day was work was definitely unevenly distributed based on your skill within a department. So did were you able to do any workload balancing, like redistribute stuff? Did it allow you to highlight all-stars who were going above and beyond? Like what kind of effect did it have on the team itself?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we hadn't even implemented the tool. We were just working with the customer success team and the ATC team.
Just putting the mapping documents together.
Yeah. You're just and
it's an informative process.
Right? It really is. You're like, oh, it's like, listen, we already had an Excel document that listed everything out there we're using to track it, which is, kind of a joke, but like, that's all you really have. If you don't have a closed tool like Flowcast, what you have is Excel. And, the implementation and the customer success team at Flowcast, just like putting that gentle pressure on your back, right? Of saying, hey, we got to get this done. We're here to help you. Really, like that by itself brought about a lot of discussion on workload and everything. But like you said, if you have, you go back to that closed analytics tool, you might see a team member that's like always beating by a day their tasks. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, one, I can move up their work maybe a day, right? And have that discussion with them, be like, hey, you're so great. I got to move this up. And like, thank you for that. But it also allows you to have that conversation with them being like, hey, do you want more? And what is that more for you? And that's really important for motivation and like career alignment and everything. Cause all of a sudden they might be like, I really wanted to help out with inventory. Mm-hmm. Really want to look under the hood. Maybe I'm entering all the inventory bills, but if I could do the inventory reserve analysis, I would love to do that. And all of a sudden, you elevated your team, right? You brought them to the next level. And that feels great for everybody. You're like, they're happy that they get to be involved in more. You're happy to see their excitement. And then, you also are happy because you have less work to do. Like it's a win all around.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm curious. I don't know if this is me being a pain in the ass millennial or if it's just me as a person, but I really enjoy visibility and transparency into what I'm working on. And I didn't feel like I had that. I was so siloed to my thing. But did you find your team like digging around Flowcast? Because that is at the core of our application, right? Is transparency, giving everyone visibility into everything that's going on. So did you find them learning more about your overall accounting operation and digging into it from there?
Yeah, you definitely saw a better understanding across the board. Previous to that, there was an Excel document. It's clunky. It's not easy to flow through. You don't really see the dependencies. And so having that open, let people in the AP really department understand what the AR team was doing, right? And vice versa, and have better conversations about how maybe they're impacting each other in little ways or ways they can help. And so that was really, I think a lot of them enjoyed that and learned quite a bit from that. Mm-hmm. And then it also, the flux analysis tool that Flowcast has, a lot of times I think you'll see controllers just take that burden on themselves. Like, all right, I'm going to answer X, Y, Z, do all this because it's so hard to like rally the troops and they have so many other things to do. But if you use that tool and you delegate it to the team members that are relevant to the things, all of a sudden they're reading through all these explanations that the other teams are doing. And they're also, not only are they maybe understanding what other team members are doing, right? But they have an understanding of AR, or they have an understanding of AP, or they have an understanding of inventory, or they have an understanding of the controllership. And that really will again, just like help them get to the next level in a way that, you having conversations with them ever so often about things will never do, right? There's no real other educational component in there for them. And so by giving them that exposure, man, it's like night and day what you can see with your team. It's so crazy.
Flux, I love Flux. I feel like that's where you do start to really understand what's going on at the business and what type of strategic or operating decisions are we making as a company and how is that flowing through the financials and everything. So that's awesome to hear. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when I did some of my first fluxes at Skull Candy. I realized how dumb I was, like
how little I
you just sit there like, yeah, like you'd say something and the CFO would be like, is it though? Robert Pay. I mean, oh my gosh. Like I just felt like I learned so much doing a flux and getting feedback from a flux that I was never going to learn by performing the work, and it's just, yeah, just so impactful.
It's not like it was an audit where you do a flux procedure, but it's really just rolling forward whatever happened in the last year. And it's hopefully that account went up again, and hopefully it's the same explanation and I can just roll it forward from last year. It's not like that when you get into industry, and it is more, no, I actually care about what happened. We're not just trying to get the documentation done to get the audit over with. It's like, tell me what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if, you better have a good story, because like we will make decisions off of this, and you're like, oh, this got serious.
It's no joke. The flux goes from being an audit, something you're just trying to get over with, to an actual incredible strategic task as part of within an accounting department. Nice. And I want to, all right, so we're creeping up on time, but I want to wrap it up. Like, where do you think, and don't let me influence you on this, I'm curious, where do you think accounting's going? Like, what do you view as sort of the future of the role and how it's going to evolve?
I truly believe this. I truly believe that accounting is the accounting team and department, the whole office of the CFO is this huge catalyst for change within an organization, right? And we talked about a little bit of it, right? Like, just in the DNA of accountants and the way we run ourselves, our work, the foundations of our principles, all of that just makes it to where we can provide an elevated service to the organization, but also coach the rest of the organization on elevating themselves. So I really do see the accounting department, if you can maintain a strong relationship with other departments, really being able to be this catalyst of great change in the way we do our business, right? Taking out the mundane, simplifying it. There's a huge, everybody's known this. Every business writer for decades has written about how there's a huge communication problem in every organization that manifests in 1,000 different ways, right? We're humans and we have a hard time communicating. So when we put in tools that help simplify, like Flowcast, it just helps simplify and really draw clear lines of communication. And you don't have to get worried about, okay, did they say this? When is this? How do I need to do this? You just are able to unlock so much potential. And so that's where, like Flowcast Ops, which unfortunately came out right as I was leaving Kodiak Cake, so we didn't get a chance to really implement it, or I didn't get a chance to play around with it. I'm just so damn excited to see like how that is going to change the relationship of accounting with the other teams, how those teams are going to feel about themselves. I look at your customer service reps, and that's a team that gets beat down in almost every organization. That's really hard, a lot of processes. And you give them a tool that helps simplify that, I think you're going to see amazing change in there. And that's being driven by your accounting function. So I really do see accounting as this great catalyst of change for the future of the organization. And because, like I said, those who don't know the past are destined to repeat it. And I probably ruined that quote, but the idea is simple enough. Accountants, we know the past. And if we can get out of how long it takes us to report on that past, and we can look to the future, there's no better player to put in place from an operations, hell, even a sales point of view. We can just be so impactful for that. So I'm really excited to see. I think you've made some claims about trying to get COOs to actually come from an accounting background, to have that rigor. And I think if you start seeing that in organizations, those are going to be the ones that everybody's going to be talking about. That everybody's going to have on their shelf, is going to have on their phone or whatever it is. Those are going to be the organizations that are really making the big plays in the future.
Well, I could not agree more. That to me sounds like a very bright future for accounting, and I know at Flowcast we're going to try our damnedest to make that happen
Oh, we'll get it
with
there.
our product and training, and yeah, going out to market. So, man, great alignment. I'm really excited to have you on board, Stefan. I'm gonna wrap it up here, but any parting words for the audience before we sign off?
I think the last thing I would say is there's few companies out there. I've only been at at Flowcast for 2 weeks, but there are very few companies out there that practice what they preach, that have it in their DNA. And just within a short period that I've been here, it's been so apparent to me that I'm just so excited to be here and have this opportunity to, as we said, be a catalyst of change in this industry to drive its future instead of being a passenger. And that's just super exciting. So if you want to be a part of that, come join the Flowcast family.
We are hiring. Yes, for sure. Like wrapping up with that message. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Stefan, thank you for joining us. To the audience, thank you for tuning in. Hope this was informational and enjoyable as well.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.